Good morning. Welcome. We are waiting for some more participants to join in. We will soon start. Good morning. Let's wait for a few more seconds. I see the participants list is still counting. We are about 40 people now. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Maurizio Pocchi, and on behalf of VTA Florence, I would like to welcome you to this webinar about low ILUC risk feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel and soil carbon sequestration in Mediterranean marginal land. So the title of this webinar is, let's say, the common ground of two Horizon 2020 projects, namely BIO4A and BIKE. BIO4A is an innovation action, a demonstration project with both an industrial component and a research component to demonstrate to produce sustainable aviation fuels. And BIKE is a coordination and support action to support the market uptake of low ILUC risk biofuels in Europe. So we will hear presentations from both of the projects today. The webinar is recorded. These slides will be available soon after immediately after the webinar, and we will send out a follow-up message to everyone, so you will receive later. You can type your questions in the question and answer panel, where they will be answered, if possible, by typing, or some of them will be taken to the speakers later. We have like 6 presentations. We will have in the introduction, we will hear about the two projects, the background of the two projects, and a short introduction to the current state of the development of EU policies on advanced biofuels, Then we will hear from Joint Research Center in the results on the mapping of the sustainable potential for advanced biofuels production on marginal lands. Then we will go through experiences, field experiences on the cultivation of Camelina in semi-arid land with high risk of desertification in Spain. Then we will hear interesting results about the combination of growing Camelina and the application of biochar to soils and the effect on the soil and on the crops. And then finally, the best agronomic practices for low ILUC risk biomass feedstock from Effie Alexopoulos from CRES. She will join us later. So I will start with, I would like to start with the first introduction from Tommaso Barsali. He will just introduce about the BIO4A project. Tommaso, I will share my screen. Just a second. Just a second, let me share my screen. Okay. I'll put it in full mode. Okay, so Tommaso, please start.
Yeah, hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Tommaso Barsali. I'm a senior agronomist at the Record Consortium, which is a coordinator of the BIO4A project. So the BIO4A project is now in its last year, and it's an industrial project funded by H2020 on advanced sustainable biofuels for aviation. In particular, sustainable aviation fuels from waste feedstock, like UCO and tallow oil and this type of feedstock. And Maurizio, I think you should, yeah, but I think you exited the full mode.
How about now?
I think now it's good. Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
So no problem. So the project started in 2018 and is now, as I was saying, in its last year. The main objectives of the project is like I was saying, to bring sustainable aviation fuel from residual lipids to full commercial scale production. So the project has currently produced 1,000 tons of HEFA through our partner ENI. And this is, let's say, the most industrial part of the project. So this sustainable aviation fuel will be, after blending, will be delivered to an airport in Schiphol, Amsterdam, without any, let's say, segregated mode. So in like a regular fossil kerosene, and will be used to operate regular flights from Schiphol through KLM. So this is the most, let's say, industrial part. We also have a nice part of the project, which is what we will be talking more today, which is on the alternative supply of virgin lipids, of course, from sustainable feedstocks. This also recovering marginal land and using biochar to regenerate the capacity of soils to stock carbon. So this is more or less, let's say, a brief recap of the BIO4A project. So there will be my colleague Calogero Schillaci from JRC, who will be presenting a very interesting study of the potential of marginal land for this type of value chain. Then Javier Preto on the results of the field trials that we've been performing together in collaboration with also with us in Spain. And I will be presenting some interesting data on what happens in soil and the specifics of what has happened in the Italian field trials, which are slightly bigger than what we did in Spain. So I don't know, Maurizio, if you think we should say more, or
no. Thank you for this quick introduction. I will stop sharing my presentation. In the meantime, I see Effie and Javier have joined in. Hello, good morning. We are now about 80 people in this webinar. So I would now like to give the floor to Andrea Salimbeni for the introduction. A few words about BIKE and a quick introduction on the state of play of the EU policy on biofuels. Andrea, you can share.
Yep. Second. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks so much. Okay. A brief presentation of BIKE project. BIKE project is focused on low ILUC risk biofuels production system in Europe, as it aims to support the European Commission of getting the target of advanced biofuels production in Europe. The objective is to validate and certify the low ILUC risk status of 4 different value chains. Short introduction, the specific objectives of BIKE projects are, of course, to facilitate the market uptake, as I said, of low ILUC risk biofuels. Just a short parenthesis, low ILUC risk biofuels are those biofuels which are produced from feedstocks without affecting the food and feed value chain. Then, of course, we want to inform and train the biofuel stakeholders about the opportunities of low ILUC risk fuels to provide and to contribute to the policy framework by giving evidence about the experience collected in the projects, and to remove the barriers against the market uptake of low ILUC risk biofuels, biomass feedstocks as well. How we want to do that? Trying to change the slide. We have identified 4 case studies led by industrial actors or expert actors. The first is about castor oil cultivation in abandoned, unused, or severely degraded lands for the production of hydrogenated vegetable oil in 3 sites, in Italy, in Kenya, and in Greece. In Kenya, where the production is already at an industrial scale, an audit has been performed by ISCC. Record, research center I'm working for, is coordinating the case study on perennial lignocellulosic crops cultivated for bioethanol production. Also, like for the castor case, perennial crops are cultivated in abandoned and severely degraded lands, so that to not affect the production of food and feed. Then the third one is on Brassica carinata, to be cultivated as a cover crop or in rotation with conventional crops in 3 sites, in Italy, in Greece, and Uruguay. Uruguay is the site where the audit has been performed as an industrial cultivation is in place. The fourth is about biogas direct model applied for biomethane production. Biogas direct is based on using cover crops for agricultural residues to produce biomethane for transport sector. This case study integrates biomethane with biomethane to liquid centralized plants, which could bring to a massive production of liquid biofuels, low ILUC also in this case. The activity is performed and distributed in 7 work packages. The first is the crucial work package, which is about developing an ISCC system certification module to certify that the identified sites in Kenya, in Uruguay, in Italy for biogas are low ILUC. This is the first activity and outcome of BIKE project. Then, of course, we have performed the mapping of low ILUC risk biofuel, mainly feedstocks in Europe. And of course, we have a study, and we are still working on assessing the replicability potential of the case studies that we have identified and described in the slide before. Of all the 4 case studies, a life cycle assessment, a full sustainability assessment is done by FAO. And of course, in parallel, we are carrying on a detailed activity to support the policy framework and the policymakers in the development of reliable and effective directive, amending the Renewable Energy Directive to enable and unlock the potential of these biofuels in Europe. Here, an introduction about the policy framework. I will be very quick. We start in 2018 with the Renewable Energy Directive, the second version. The 2019 with the delegated regulation on assessing the sustainability of feedstocks, of course, biofuels policy framework. And then the implementing regulation of 2022, the last year. And we will see the delegated directive, the draft version published recently by the Commission. I will be quick on Renewable Energy Directive. The target is to have 40% of renewable energy in 2030. But what is it is important for this project is the production of advanced biofuel. And what are advanced biofuel? Advanced biofuel are those listed in the Part A and Part B of the directive, which are shown in this slide. Part B is including only animal fats and used cooking oil. Part A includes all those feedstocks, biomass feedstocks, that can be considered as advanced. From 2018, in 2019, the Commission published a delegated act for the determination of high indirect land use change risk feedstocks, which is quite important for our project, but also for the market itself. In this regulation, there are the criteria for the certification of low ILUC risk fuel, and how to determine when the feedstock is of high risk for the land use. In this regulation, in this delegated regulation, criteria for the determination of additionality measures are also described. Then we go for the last approved already in June 2022, the rules to verify the sustainability and greenhouse gas emissions saving criteria for low indirect land use change feedstocks. This is quite important regulation published, as you see, in 14th of June 2022. General rules of governance, audit process, audit scope, and rules for the implementation of the mass balance systems are included in this regulation. These rules have been used and adopted by BIKE projects to perform the auditing activity on the biofuels production sites. Then we come to the last, quite relevant, the Commission delegated directive amending the Annex 9 of the EU Renewable Energy Directive. This proposal, because it is still a draft coming from a consultation, lists what are the feedstock to be added in Part A and Part B of the Renewable Energy Directive. And as you see, there is an important aspect that in Part A, non-food crops grown on severely degraded land, not suitable for food and feed, is included. That means that the value chain where the castor oil is cultivated for HVO production and lignocellulosic biomass are produced in degraded lands for bioethanol. These are advanced biofuel. This is quite important because it's clarified that they will be double counting. Then another important point, the feedstock to be included in Part B. Intermediate crops, of course, there is a long list. What is matter for the project and for the topic presenting is that intermediate crops, including catch crops and cover crops, can be considered advanced biofuels. Of course, it is important to underline that to be considered low ILUC risk fuels, it is important that they do not trigger demand for additional land. And of course, they do not reduce the soil organic matter because it means in that case they would be harmful for the soil quality. So an improvement of the soil quality and an additionality in the biomass production is needed to consider a feedstock, a low ILUC, and in this case, an advanced one. Of course, this is a consultation, so it will be improved and integrated probably in the next months. Before leaving the floor to the other speakers, just some information about why we have to push for low ILUC and what is the situation in Europe. Summarizing, we have about 15.5 billion liters of biodiesel and HVO produced in Europe. However, about 4% of these fuels is in Part A, and 30% is from part B, mainly used cooking oil. So there is quite a strong need of increasing the production of advanced biofuels, and in particular of low ILUC risk feedstock, so that we can produce really advanced biodiesel and HVO. The production of ethanol is less than 1/5 of the biodiesel one. The second generation ethanol, that means lignocellulosic ethanol, which is the target of BIKE project case study 2, is almost not existing. We are at about 1% from all the biomass of the whole bioethanol production. These sectors are standing. There is a stagnation. There is not a growth in this year compared to the past years. More interesting, the point of biomethane in terms of market growth. There is a strong market growth for biogas and biomethane production. We have to take care that this biomethane is advanced. So far, about 700 plants produce biomethane over the about 19,000 producing biogas in Europe. A strong effort must be done to make this biomethane suitable for advanced biofuels production. In any case, it is visible how we need to dedicate strong efforts to unlock the potential of low ILUC risk feedstocks to get the targets that we have for 2030. That means having 13.3% in 2050, 2.8% in 2030 of the whole biofuels share in Europe. This is not that ambitious target, but we have, I think, to give effort to get it and in a sustainable way. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for this quick and very precise overview. It is not easy to keep up with all the changes and updates in the... Sorry, I forgot to thank you, Ernesto, for reminding me to open up the video, to open up the webcam. Thank you for this quick overview of the policy evolution. So now let's go to the more research-related component of the webinar. And yes, I see Calogero. Good morning. So feel free to share your screen.
Hello. Hello, everyone. So please, Maurizio, can you tell me how much time do I have?
I think
10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah, 10, 12 minutes is fine.
Try to be quick.
Can you put it in full mode?
Yes, yes. Can you see it?
Not yet.
I shared the presentation.
We can't see it in full. Maybe now. Try to scroll.
Okay.
No.
Okay, wait a second. What about now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much for inviting me to talk today to this interesting joint project webinar. So today we will present the results of the two big deliverables we have done in the last 2 years, working with the BIO4A partnership. So today we will talk about the mapping of sustainable potential for advanced biofuel production on marginal lands in the Mediterranean. So, and when we started, we had basically many literature papers and reports, and many of them were, let's say, not in agreement between them. So the challenge in this work was to try to see between all the literature who was, let's say, up to date, who was using latest technologies, and we wanted to use and make use of the newest data, the European Lucas soil data, and also the European monitoring of agricultural systems meteorological data. And you will see how we prepare the new suitability map for Camelina, starting from a biophysical assessment, that is what you can see now, to a real yield potential map. So first pillar of the research is the crop, so the Camelina crop, and the mechanistic process-based model, Armosa, developed by Professor Acutis at the University of Milan. So in this work, there are many other actors, such as as I said before, the monitoring agricultural resource meteorological data, the Lucas soil data, and some topographic layers. And the approach we used was combining the process-based model and the biophysical assessment to define potential yield of Camelina in the study area. So other two pillars of this research are, in general, the concept of energy crops and the ILUC, so the inverse land use, or the let's say the idea that energy crops must not substitute food crops, and they might be integrated into rotations. And that was our task, to model the Camelina into a rotation with barley. And the marginal land was another pillar, which is a very, let's say, complex concept. And as you can see here, there are many, let's say, definition of and acception of marginal lands. And we try to be very practical. And as a result of our modeling, we define an innovative, let's say, or a new way to define marginality. Just briefly, I will show you how the model works. So the process-based model are crop models which used many sources of data and combine all together to give, as a result, generally crop development. And in this specific model gave us as a result not only the crop yield, but also some parameters about the soil. So the development of the soil organic carbon and the nitrate leaching in the topsoil. So among the parameters which are used in the model, there are a crop development partition coefficients, nitrogen dilution curve, CO2 potential assimilation rate at sunlight saturation, water stress sensibility, and specific leaf area with respect to biomass. And the model was using daily meteorological data from the AgriForecast database that you can freely download. These data have a unique limitation, which is a spatial scale of 25 kilometers. But in our procedure, so we used to calibrate the data, we use Camelina yield from literature, so from a previously published report. And then we hypothesize a cultivation protocol which is in line with the cultivation protocol of the Camelina company and the field trials. Here you can see the results of our model, which is now submitted for publication in an international journal, and you can see that the results of the Camelina yield are inside the boundary of the confidence intervals of the measured data. And the data set that we found, unfortunately, was not too big, but it is of 20 years of experiments in 9 sites. So you can see here the results, and why there are 2 maps, because one map is the map of the yield of Camelina in rotation with barley. So you have to imagine this yield once every 2 years, and in the right hand map, so of the same country, you can see the binary classification of marginality, because in the literature we found that the average yield in the South European territories is around 1.3 tons per hectare. So as you can see in Italy, as a result of our modeling routine in the 20 years 2000-2020, you can see that there are very few areas that do not match, or let's say that are really marginal, while most of the other areas are not considered marginal. And in Spain, the situation is a bit different, because due to mostly climate constraint, most of the areas are below this 1.3 ton potential yield threshold. So to give you some numbers, so the average yield found in the study area was 2.4 tons per hectare per year, with a quite high standard deviation. And we also have an idea of how was the evolution, or how it would be the soil organic carbon dynamics by assuming barley residue retention, and of course no fire, because we have a slightly low gain in soil organic carbon stock, but this is really associated with the residue retention of the barley and no other disturbances. And among the 56 NUTS2, 32 NUTS2 had positive soil organic carbon change due to the cultivation of Camelina in rotation with barley. And so another result, or expressing the result in area, so among 500,000 square kilometers, 310,000 have a positive soil organic carbon change. This is not the only result of our research, because a second deliverable requested us to calculate a potential sustainability of the production of Camelina, of feedstock in the study area. So to have an idea of the potential environmental sustainability, we used an approach which is called convergence of evidence, to combine and put together the information from several other indicators, such as soil erosion, soil compaction, nitrogen inputs, soil biodiversity, and aridity index. So we reclassified those 5 indicators into classes according to their potential sustainability, potential environmental sustainability. And as a result, so we obtain an indication of the potential environmental sustainability based on environmental proxies. So the color you can see in the map indicate sustainability from very, very low to very good. And you can see that in Europe, so in the study area, there are very few very endangered environmental sustainable regions, whereas the majority of the territories are fall into the class moderate. And to combine the yield potential with the environmental sustainability, we we overlaid the two results map, and what you can see here is that you can see with very reddish colors what will be the impact of cultivating Camelina or any other energy crop in these territories. And with a greenish color, you will see the potential, let's say, impact of the potential environmental sustainability into the other territories. So in red areas, you might encounter some problems due to many factors. So the factor we used was soil erosion, soil compaction, and loss of biodiversity and nitrate leaching due to many reasons. So due to the nature of soils, the meteorological regime, but in average, so you can see that in Europe, let's say 70% of the study area was was safe of having strong environmental problems after the cultivation. So this is the result of two working packages, and one of them was already submitted to an international peer review journal, and we hope that these results will let's say encourage for the cultivation of energy crops in rotation with cereals to not undermine food production, and also to consider good management practice to keep the soil organic carbon content, to not lose soil organic carbon stock in our soils. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Calogero. Thank you for the perfect timing. These are encouraging results. I look forward to the outcomes, and I would like now to introduce our next speaker, Javier Prieto, who will tell us about some of the results from the fields of growing Camelina in semi-arid land with high risk of desertification. In the meantime, I see there is a few questions in the question and answer panel. So if the speakers identify some of the questions that they can reply in the chat, please do. Otherwise, we will try and take some at the end of the series of presentations, if we have enough time. Javier, I can see you. Good morning.
Hello, Mauricio.
Please feel free to share your slides.
I'm going to try. Do you see my screen?
Yes, can you put it in full mode, please?
I'll try.
Fine.
It's running?
Thank you. Yes, it works.
Well, thank you very much for assisting to this webinar and giving the opportunity to show our work from Camelina company these last 5 years for BIO4A project. I'm going to try to follow this order for this presentation. I would like to start speaking a little bit about the Camelina crop. And after, I'm going to follow with the methodology, the development, and the results with some conclusions about the result that we've obtained from this project. I have to say that these results are preliminary because we are working yet with the last year of test. But well, we could see already some conclusions about that. Well, speaking about the Camelina, I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with this crop, but it's an oilseed crop from the Brassica family, and you can see some pictures here with the different stages of the crop. And speaking about some features that make this crop interesting for the farmer is basically that it's a really resilient crop. This Camelina doesn't show a really high water requirements. It makes it really interesting for marginal lands, and also it's really cold and heat tolerance. And also until this moment, we didn't find any pests or diseases that maybe because it's not a really studied crop, but this is a really interesting characteristic of the crop. It's a really competitive plant, and also it's a crop that doesn't need you can work with it with the conventional machinery, and they don't need a lot of inputs. And what it makes really interesting for the farmer for different crop rotations is that inside of all the variability in the germplasm, there are some lines that they show a real unique precocity. So it fits in catch cover crop and other models that they are growing in these times. And speaking about the tasks that we follow in BIO4A project, we've worked with two main objectives. The first one is to test what is the effect of the application of biochar in the soil in the crop development, and at the same time we develop some screening about our germplasm to select the variety that is more adapted to the Spanish conditions, especially in the places where they are considered marginal lands. We've worked in two different locations, in Madrid, with collaboration of the INEA, and at the same time, in parallel, we've worked with the Finca Tres Sierras, that is in Ciudad Real, and with the collaboration of the Junta Castilla-La Mancha. Both locations are inside the area that is considered a marginal land. They show a really low amount of rainfall during the year, no more than 400 millimeters per year. And the most different that you can find between them is that maybe the texture of the soil. In Madrid, we find a clay soil. Meanwhile, we find a loamy soil in the Ciudad Real. We'll see that this affects to the results of the first objective, that is the application of biochar in soil. And we define 7 treatments for this study. First one, a no-fertilization treatment. The idea is to use it as a control and compare the rest of them to this one. As a second one, a mineral fertilization, that is the typical one that the farmers use. And also, we've defined 3 different combinations of biochar and compost that provided by record, and also a treatment with biochar plus a mineral fertilization and typical NPK. And finally, in order to understand what is the effect of the combi, the biochar with the compost, we have a treatment with 100% of compost. I have to explain that the biochar and the compost has been applied only one time before starting the project. And meanwhile, the background fertilization was applied every single year. So we've seen that some kind of nutrients has been depleted during the years. That is logical. Also, I want to say that the dressing fertilization was applied in all the springs of the test, in all the treatments, with the exception of the no fertilization treatment. Well, here you have an scheme of the design that we've applied during these years. We define a simple crop rotation of Camelina barley, but maybe it's not the ideal, but it's what we have to do with these 5 years of project. And the first year we work with the control variety. That is the one that we use for commercial issues. And the second and the fourth year, we use a typical barley variety specific for each location. And the year 3 and 5, we compare the performance of the control variety also the varieties selected in the objective 2. Here you can see some pictures of the 2 locations where we work for the first objective. On the left hand, you can see a picture of the La Canaleja and the test, and on the right hand, you can see the test that we developed in Junta Castilla-La Mancha. Speaking about the objective 2, we've worked the first year in a grow chamber. There we defined 3 regimes of irrigation in order to understand how is the efficiency of the different varieties with the water. So we can choose one of these varieties. We corroborate this result the second year with a typical field test in semi-arid conditions. We developed this one in Finca Entre Sierras in a plot quite near to the test that we are developing for the objective 1. And the year 3 and 5, we compare the 2 varieties, the selected one. And well, I tried to compilate all the results that we've obtained during these years, but you'll see that there is a really positive effect of the addition of the biochar to the yield results, especially in the location 1. In the case of the location 2, we've seen that especially the first years, we've seen a really response to the compost treatment, but during this last year, this result going down has a negative tendency. But if you study all these results together, we can see that the combi treatments have been the ones that obtained the best results. And I also want to show the yield stability, where we've seen that the mineral fertilization, a typical one used for the use by the farmers, has shown a progressive decrement in the yield. Meanwhile, we've seen also that the compost and biochar have obtained better results, and especially in the case of the treatments with biochar, that we've seen a real yield stability. So, well, this is all my presentation. If you have any doubt about that, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank
Mauricio.
you. Thank you for your perfect timing. There was no need to intervene. In the meantime, this was I had listened to this presentation before, but it is interesting to see the latest results, and I can see that definitely it raised interest also in the audience. So you have at least 4 or 5 questions addressed to you, directed to you in the question and answer panel. So feel free to reply there. In the meantime, I'd like now to thanks to you. I'd like now to invite back Tommaso, who will give will present the second part of this integrated research, more on the effects of the application of biochar and compost on Camelina crops and the effects on the feedstock production and on the soil health. Okay, Tommaso, you can go.
Yeah, I hope you can see my screen.
Please put it in full mode.
Yep.
Fine, you can go.
You see the full screen, okay.
Yes, you can start.
Okay, so good morning, everyone again. My name is Tommaso Barsali. For those of you who did not assist to the previous small presentation of BIO4A, I'm an agronomist at the Record Consortium, which is the coordinator of the BIO4A project. But we also participated to the field trials in collaboration with Javi and Camelina company, which was a very fruitful collaboration. So I will start from continuing what Javier has presented. on the field trials in Spain, but let's say concentrating more on the soil aspects, and in particular on the carbon stock of soil. This is also partially to reply to a question that I saw in the Q&A on how to improve, let's say, the emissions of the whole value chain. One way is to include biochar in soil, because it's a carbon removal. So as some of you may know, the Annex 5 of the Implementing Act of the RED II specifies how you calculate the SCA factor. So the factor that you can use to claim emission savings from soil carbon accumulation when you produce low ILUC biofuels. So it's a rather, let's say, elaborated but rather simple formula, which basically is based on, and this is what we will concentrate now on the difference between the initial carbon stock and the carbon stock at a certain year of cultivation. So the rationale here is that you apply some specific improved agricultural management techniques to where you produce feedstock for biofuels. And if you do so, you can claim the SCA if there is a difference in the carbon stock at the beginning of the improved agricultural management at year 0, let's say, and after a number of years, up to 10 years. So we made an analysis of carbon stocks in the 2 locations that were where the field trials were done in Spain, in Madrid and Ciudad Real. So Javi was talking to you about before in the difference of yield. So there has been a difference in yield of Camelina in favor of biochar, especially biochar and compost together. Here we are analyzing a difference in carbon stocks on those soils where Camelina was cultivated, and so carbon stock is basically a multiplication of the organic carbon contained in soil multiplied per the difference in bulk density. So I'm not sure if there is any soil specialist today with us. However, this is the regular way you calculate the difference in carbon stock. So you have to measure bulk density and to measure organic carbon, which is what we did. And as you can see, there's been in orange, you can see that there has been some differences in practically all the plots where we applied organic amendments, and in particular where we applied biochar. The little star that you see in the location 2 graph is because the difference is statistically significant. However, the SCA factor does not, let's say, does not require a statistical significance, but it requires a certain number of sampling, of course. So here you can see that there has been a carbon stock increment after 3 years in location 1, where we applied biochar, and we applied biochar in combination with compost. There is a slightly, let's say, conflicting data on the Combi 20, which is not really, to our view, not really understandable, explainable, let's say. However, if you look, for example, at the biochar field plots, you can see that there are increments in both locations. So this is interesting because, of course, if you have at the same time an increase in yield and an increasing in carbon stock, the calculation of the SCA factor is going to be obviously positive. So this is what we wanted to complete on the Spanish field trials. Now I'd like to speak a little bit about the Italian field trial. So this is going to be a little bit similar to what you already listened to from Javi. However, these trials were made with two varieties. The big difference is that we made them with two varieties of Camelina, which were, of course, provided by Camelina company and in a larger scale. So we also did it in two locations in Tuscany. The field, let's say the design of experiment was almost the same. We used the same, one variety also was the same, short cycle variety. And we applied the same treatments to compare. So a control, NPK, so inorganic fertilization, compost alone, biochar alone, and compost plus biochar. So we divided in plots and subplots, and the total area was 1,500 square meters, so a larger area than what has been done in Spain. We no, another big difference, sorry, that I forgot about is that we did spring planting, spring seeding. So this is interesting because it's more a look on what could happen to using Camelina as an annual intercrop. So we made spring seeding. And it was a very dry year, as almost I think everywhere in Southern Europe. So we harvested in July, and we analyzed different parameters, like of course regular standard parameters on biomass, yield, on oil. We characterized soil, compost, and biochar. And so we chose two very different locations as per soil types, because this is a very sandy soil, and this one is a very, this is the same location. You can see the different stages. It's a very sandy soil, and the other one was a clay soil. So we could have a reference. So as you can see, precipitations were quite low from seeding to harvest, especially in location Montebaldi. So this, of course, had an impact on every phenological stage, let's say, of the plant. But we still see, let's say, a statistically significant difference in treatments containing biochar, especially in Terontola, where you can see there's a strong difference in yields in between the two locations. But let's say the indication that we got from the Spanish field trials continues to be the same, at least for Camelina here in Italy. The same thing, this was grain yield, seed yield, let's say, and this is dry biomass yield, which follows more or less the same pattern. And this is the end of the presentation. So thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Tommaso. And thanks to all the presenters for keeping the time. We are perfectly in time. I replied to Emiliano in the chat before. There was a question about the full GHG performance of the whole value chain. This is an aspect that is still being addressed by BIO4A, I think, and it's part of the, it's being considered for the upcoming webinars, because I didn't introduce at the beginning, but this is a series of webinars and in-person events that will be from now until this summer. So this is the first episode, and I'm sure we will be able to be more precise in that occasion. So in any case, if any of the presenters feel anything to add, please do it in the chat. In the interest of time now, I would like to go back to BIKE project and invite Effie Alexopoulou from Greek Press. Good morning, Effie. Nice to see you.
Morning,
For a
Maurizio.
presentation on the best agronomic practices for low ILUC risk biomass feedstock.
Maurizio, is it possible to share your screen to my presentation?
Yes.
Because I'm not in my office today.
Okay, give me a second.
Yes, I'm sorry for this, but I had to travel to establish a new trial. So my presentation is going to present some options to produce low ILUC feedstock either on marginal land or in rotation with existing cropping systems. So I'm going to present to give some ideas from not only from BIKE but from other projects. Just put it in full screen. Is it full screen in your screen for me?
No, I don't think so.
Not yet.
Just a second, I have a problem with the panel, with the Zoom panel. Just a second, it's the Zoom panel, let me remove it.
Anyway, my presentation is starting from the marginal area that we monitor in Europe in a previous project that completed at the end of last year. The project was by MAGIC. And in this area, I cannot say it very well, Maurizio, I don't know the others. Oh, now it's okay. Okay, let's go to the next. So the next slide is about this one is about the marginal land in Europe. This was estimated by Elberson team from a Wageningen Research Institute in MAGIC project, where it was estimated that 28% of the total agricultural land in Europe can be considered as marginal. Of course, this somebody can say that this is very big amount of area, but some of this area is already used, although considered marginal. You can see that in the Mediterranean area, this marginal land is almost 34% higher than the other climatic zones. And here, the maps work has been done by, using the marginal land facing natural constraint that was split in 6 groups, and you can see that in the Mediterranean region, the routing at the adverse routing condition, it was the most important parameter for the marginality. Let's move to the next slide, where you will see something that Andrea Salibeni already presented about what we are doing in BIKE. In BIKE, we have 2 value chains. The first is on specific crops where we are growing on marginal, degraded, abandoned land. And in MAGIC, we have castor oil, castor bean, and perennial grasses. And a second type that is to insert some non-food energy crops in rotation systems without affect negatively the production of food and feed crops. This is not an easy exercise, and sometimes it looks very confusing. Let's move to the next. Just 2 slides from MAGIC. Here you can see which were the top 20 crops that has been selected in MAGIC as the most promising crops to be grown on marginal land. I group it in 3 main categories: the oilseeds. Today, you had the possibility to see a lot of things about Camelina. You can see it in the first group. So crops like Camelina, cranberry, castor bean, carinata, safflower, considered good for marginal land. Lignocellulosic crops like perennial grasses, woody species, fiber crops, and carbohydrate crops like biomass sorghum. And the second category, you can see it includes 3 more subcategories. But you can see in total we had 20 crops. 8 of them could be grown throughout Europe, and some of them considered multi-purpose. If you go to the next, you can see again the map of the partners doing trials in MAGIC, and you can see which ones in red can be grown throughout Europe and considered very important for this reason. Let's go to the next, where I'm going to present 3 examples from Magic project, you can see the field trials, the yields. I'm starting with miscanthus. In the majority of the European research project work on miscanthus. It's a perennial grass, is very important, and in BIKE, it was one of the 4 crops did audit. So actually we did audit in UK. So some examples that this was tested a lot in Optima project, Optimism, Grace, that is actually now is going to complete it. It's a BBI project, very important, and also Magic. So you can see many different case studies where we established miscanthus in different marginality fields facing different marginality problems. You can see from the graph that the yields were differ a lot. It depends strongly on the marginality problem. So you can see even 2 tons per hectare, and in some case 25. So it's largely vary among the marginality problem. Let's move to the next. Camelina. Camelina was presented previous by BIO4A project. Is a very important crop. And why? Because of the short growing cycle. It's the ideal crop to be inserted in the existing cropping system and not affect the yields and the production area of food and feed crops. In the Mediterranean area, we can say that we can do the sowing up to the beginning of December, let's say January, and we can do the harvest in the middle of May. So if there is enough water, even we can do a second crop in the same year. So very short rotation cycle, can even grow on the marginal lands, and that's why in a lot of projects, Camelina was a key crop. You can see some examples: Magic, BIO4A, and Twist, Force Med, Carina, that's just starting, and a lot of other projects. Let's move to the next slide where I'm presenting just hemp. Hemp is not directly an energy crops. It's a crops for the bioeconomy. It's a multi-purpose, so many different applications. But in the streams where we're producing all of these bio-based products, we have a lot of residues that can be used for biomass and for energy production. Here I'm presenting only 2 slides from Magic, where you can see the large variation of the yields depending on the area of marginal land that was cultivated. This crop, apart from the marginal land, has another asset, can be grown on contaminated sites. And next week, I think on 1st of March, we have a webinar for this reason where you can see the phytoremediation of 3 projects using crops like miscanthus to decontaminate marginal contaminated sites. I think Mauricio will update at the end about this. Let's go to the next. So with these 3 slides, I just presented 3 examples of crops that we studied. And let's go back to BIKE. Back to BIKE. So in BIKE, I told you 2 value chains, one on marginal land, and here we selected castor oil, where Amy is growing castor bean for HVO, and perennial grasses like miscanthus. And the second type is either to do a rotation where you can use the crop for biogas, or to grow Brassica carinata in the existing cropping system, but without affect the yields of the commercial crops, food and feed. And you can see the end users. Let's move to the next. The next slide just presented a case study in Greece. So in central of Greece, where I'm here today, so we did a trial for 2 years. It was a trial, but at the same time, it's a case study for a BIKE. So we went to an unused area and we grow castor beet with no tillage, so reduced practices. We use 1 hybrid import from Caima, Brazil. We didn't detect problems with diseases and insects. Of course, we had to irrigate, but we got at least yields of 2 to 2.5 tons per hectare seeds. Keep in mind that castor oil has 50% oil. But what is the problem with castor bean? Although it's very good crop for the marginal lands and can use them, and we can go to them to grow castor bean, what is still needed to be improved is the harvesting of the crop. We need to improve that in order to have a mature value chain. Let's go to the next. I told you before that we did the sowing with no-till. You can see the residues from the previous cultivation that we had on the field. We did the sowing directly without to prepare the soil, and you can see the new plants that are arise among the straw that was from the previous cultivation. So in this way, we did as low as possible practices in the field. Let's move to the next. Here, I'm going to another project, Be Cool, that Mauricio knows very well because we work on this very nice project for 4.5 years, I think, or 5 years. So in this project, we grow a dedicated crop on marginal land, but we had another exercise. We had 5 rotation schemes compared to a commercial rotation scheme that it was maize and wheat. In between it was fallow, and we insert a number of lignocellulosic crops, even some hemp, biomass sorghum, hemp, kenaf, different crops. And what we saw here, I don't present the very final results, because this year we managed to have 2 full rotation cycles. We saw that all the new rotation did not reduce the productivity of maize and cotton and corn and wheat. On the contrary, from the same land unit, we managed to take extra biomass for other applications, for bioenergy. And let's move to the next. Some photos from this trial. You can see the wheat, and here you can see the sun hemp, a very nice crop that is a fabace, very good for the soil, and that we import in our rotation scheme in Be Cool. And I will go to the last 2 slides that is dedicated to another project that started last November. It's Midas, it's Horizon Europe, where in this project we selected 10 non-edible crops that we're going to test it in new cropping system in intercropping and agroforestry. Which are these crops? Is a group of oilseeds that are not edible, like castor bean, safflower, carinata, and crambe. We have lignocellulosic crops like miscanthus, poplar, willow, Siberian elm, and dryland shrubs like guayule. Why guayule? It's because of the industrial application to produce, let's say, tires or latex, etc. And crops like lavender. Here, in this project, the aim is to get bio-based product and bioenergy, and to have circular use, and to grow all of these crops on marginal land. Let's move to the next slide just to see which were the cropping system. We have 2 types. We have on strips perennial grasses like miscanthus, and in between annual crops that are going to be rotated every year. And the second type is agroforestry, when woody species are on strips, and in between you can see 3 annual crops. In this project, we just doing right now the establishment, and I do hope to have good results to present it in the near future. Just before to finish my presentation, I would like to remind you, and Mauricio will circulate for sure information about another workshop, physical and virtual, that we're going to do in Thessaloniki on low ILUC feedstock on 3rd of March 2023. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Effie. Thank you, Effie. Yes, as Effie was saying, we are working on an in-person and hybrid event on the 30th of March in Thessaloniki, where all the projects involved in the development of low ILUC biofuels, biomass for different applications will be invited. And I think this was good also from EFI to show how the issue of marginal lengths can be approached from different points of view, from these different projects. I think there was a question in the chat before, how does the change in the policy affect the biofuel sector now that with the progressive phase out of combustion engines? Well, in one case, I think we demonstrated today that first, we can use this feedstock from marginal land to produce sustainable aviation fuels, which is one of the sectors that can be, that certainly will need biofuels in the future, even after the phase out of the combustion engines. And second, with the project that EFI showed also Midas, I think it's a good demonstration that these solutions that we are developing today are solutions that can deliver, are useful also for the whole bioeconomy, not only for biofuels. And as Tommaso and Calogero showed before, they can also be beneficial for the broader Green Deal objectives of soil health, of soil carbon sequestration. So it's all intertwined and interconnected. And personally, I think is one of the most interesting parts of this research sector. I think we have a few minutes for questions. But I lost a bit the touch on the question and answer panel. I see, Effie, there is a question from Emiliano. Tato also, Effie. Let's see, one from Emiliano, Effie. Could you please refer what are the possible second crops and yields obtained after the Camelina harvest? These second crops successfully producing sufficient yields when planted from spring to summer under Mediterranean conditions without irrigation. Of course, irrigation
without irrigation is impossible.
Yes.
I know the problem that is in Spain. I know very well CMAT. In Spain, it's very difficult to grow in summer, but in Greece, at least in my country, we have large areas that we irrigate. So usually when we harvest Camelina, we can go for a second crop like corn or sunflower. So it depends of the country.
Thank you. And I see also an interesting question from Cato about the invasiveness and the risk of invasiveness of some of these lignocellulosis crops. How do we manage the spread of miscanthus? And I think this can also be applied to giant reed. How do we manage the invasiveness risk? Sorry.
I think that I didn't mention giant reed. I just said that in Magic it was selected giant reed, but I didn't present it in my presentation because I do believe that is a great risk with giant reed, although considered very good for marginal land. But miscanthus is a crop that the majority of the scientists accepted as very good crop to be grown on marginal land, and I didn't face any problem so far with this problem with miscanthus.
Great, thank you. I see one question from Shannon. Where can we find more information on the workshop of the 13th? No, it's the 30th of March, and we just finalized the agenda yesterday. We will send out with a follow-up email to all the participants, where you will also receive the slides that can be published, because I just learned from some of the speakers that there are some confidential aspects in these slides. So not all of them will be able to be shared, but everything that will be public will be shared with a follow-up email, and you will also receive the invitation to this workshop.
Just Mauricio, to explain that we just now finalizing the agenda. And just to let you know that it will be more than 12 European projects presented in this workshop. That this is very interesting because some of them funded by energy, others from bioeconomy. So it will be very nice. and we are going to have the possibility to participate online.
Thank you. So stay tuned. We will certainly make sure that you will receive the invitation in due time. I think we have time for one last question, and I think this one from Carol regarding the biochar. I don't know if Tommaso can or Andrea can reply. How was the biochar obtained for the field trials? I saw some studies that the biochar properties may change significantly depending on the production technology, of course. Can you share
Yeah, of
something
course. Yeah, no, this was pyrolysis, definitely pyrolysis, which is a thermochemical conversion process, which is more oriented to product, specifically the biochar product. Gasification is a technology more oriented to energy production, and biochar properties do differ between the two technologies. So it was obtained from lignocellulosic feedstock, poplar, and it was converted through pyrolysis in our rotating kiln, that demo plant that we have here at our premises at Record in Italy.
Thank you. So this brings us to the end of the webinar. Just to make sure just to remind you that this is a first of a series of joint webinars that we are going to organize beside the in-person events. So we will be in touch with you again with the upcoming webinars. The next one should be on the 14th, so the day before the one that was announced by Effie. There will be actually another webinar on the production on phytoremediation. Let me see. I found the
It's
title.
1st of March.
Yes, in March about phytoremediation with energy crops for biofuel production. Correct.
Correct, and there you will see 3 projects: gold, fit to climate, and cereces. And I think all of them, they have one common crop, that is miscanthus.
Yes.
I think at least one.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks to all the presenters and thanks to all the participants. We are still 70 participants at the end of the webinar, so we are quite satisfied with the outcome. We hope that you like the presentations, and we will be in touch soon with the follow-up and with the next initiatives. Thanks to all, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a nice
Bye.
afternoon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.